Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, MC Sessions. Thanks for joining us for this new series of events offered by Inntopia. We're offering these sessions to share ideas and opportunities with you and your marketing team. Through these sessions, we plan to keep you updated on what we're seeing in the industry, show you new features, and provide guidance on how to get the most out of the Inntopia Marketing Cloud platform. I'm Patrick Sandy, and I'm the Director of Strategic Services at Inntopia and helping run today's session. I'll be running the chat and asking questions to the group. If you have questions or comments, you can simply enter it into the question panel and I will share it with the group. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand and we will take you off mute. If you joined via a phone conversation, phone connection, you need to enter the audio pin to speak. Today I'm joined by Kurt Kinsterf, our Director of Customer Insights at Inntopia, and our very special guests, Caitlin Zink and David Young, members of the amazing marketing team at Killington. To kick us off today, Caitlin, David, and Kurt are going to lead a conversation around how Killington leverages acoustic programs to their fullest potentials. Following the conversation, we'll run through updates and let you carry on with your day. So let's kick things off. Kurt, Caitlin, David, welcome.
Welcome. Thanks, Patrick. So one of the things we're looking to do with this new series is highlight some of our partners doing amazing work. And one of the ideas that popped up was the concept of the use of programs in Acoustic. And any of you that are not familiar with programs, it's sort of the advanced automation functionality. It's available under automation programs. Patrick's shown a quick screen grab of where it's located. But this is, just to sort of set the stage and add some context for the conversation. Programs are, you may have seen them. They're more visually oriented workflows where you can have multiple stages of automations all within one easy to manipulate workflow. This is different than what we're going to be referring to today as automated groups, where you have individual one-off automated messages that stand alone by themselves. So we wanted to talk about this because it's something that a lot of our partners are very intimidated by. There's maybe a lack of understanding of the benefits to using programs in Acoustic. And we just wanted to walk through sort of the process of how Killington sort of went from using the older automated groups functionality to exclusively using programs for all of their automation within Acoustic. So we're going to walk through with Caitlin and David sort of that transition process, how that went. We're going to walk through some of the benefits of using programs over the automated groups. And then, we'll just show some examples of it in action. So welcome, Caitlin and David. How are you guys?
Doing well. Thanks, Kurt.
Fantastic. So yeah, why don't we start there? Why don't you guys sort of describe the process? I know you sort of went through, when we were pre-chatting, you mentioned it was a little daunting, a little potentially painful or scary, however you want to word that. But maybe let's talk about what was the impetus for moving over to programs and how you went about it. Like, what did that process look like? I know you work with Lindsay quite a bit on that on our team. Maybe let's just start there and we'll go from there.
Sure. Oops. Sorry, Dave said the exact same thing. You can go ahead.
Okay, I'll kick it off. I guess Lindsay had been sort of prodding us to move towards programs for a while, and we had a good grasp on the automated groups. So we were sort of reluctant in the beginning ourselves, but we ended up doing working with a consultant at one point, and one of the consultants we worked with had actually been involved with Acoustic at the beginning when it was Silver Pop, and he was really keen on the program. So we did some workshop stuff, and Lindsay was involved in that as well. And once we saw the benefits, I think we started playing around with it, and then once we were using them, they were easier to work with for our workflow.
Sure.
So we didn't have any reason. We actually don't use any automated groups anymore. All of our automations are programs.
Okay, so 100% programs now from, how many automated group messages would you say you had going out before sort of having to manage them all on their own independently?
Caitlin,
Upwards of 10, I would say. Upwards of 10, definitely. Now we have probably 10 to 15. So,
Okay.
and we've consolidated because the use of programs allows for that. So yeah, we've definitely increased our use of automations in general through programs, but we were running a lot of separate groups before.
That's a really good point. So do you think overall you've increased the sophistication of your automation because programs is no longer sort of this barrier, sort of this high hurdle to jump as far as workflow or actually getting the work done? Would you say you're doing more now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome. And maybe let's show an example for those not familiar at all with programs. This one you guys did, this is a very simple example, and this will help set the stage. And as we walk through this, we could touch on some of those benefits that you were talking about. Why don't we just start with this one? This is a very simple program, essentially one step. It's for purchase anniversary. Maybe we could walk through this, describe this one, Tess.
Sure. Yeah, this is a super simple one-step program, but we found it's highly effective. So this is our season pass anniversary. So basically, it sends an email 1 year post-purchase for all season pass products, sort of as a reminder, it's time to buy your pass. And even though this sort of independent of their purchase date may be independent of a deadline, it still seems to be very effective and that people are going ahead and purchasing at the same time they purchased last year. But anyways, this program would work just as well probably as an automated message group. But I think it's important to point out that it's so much easier to check in on metrics periodically because you don't have to run a report to get that high level look. You can just pop in the program, and so you can see that 280 hovering over the season pass email icon thing there. Yep. And that shows us that there are currently, those are the current active people in this program. And then you can see on the left-hand side where it says metrics next to details. This is just a screen grab, but if you were to click in there, there are tons of insights just readily available. Just take a quick peek without having to actually run a report.
Yeah, and that I think you bring up a really good point, right? Because this is sort of a campaign that people might not traditionally see as a good fit for the program's functionality, right? Because it's just one step essentially. But what you're saying is all the other sort of ancillary benefits of the programs, whether it be reporting or monitoring it, being able to pause it without having to completely recreate a new automation group. At this point, those benefits outweigh using the old automated groups at all, right? And so you're just saying, we don't care if it's one step or 50 steps. We're going to push everything in here because the benefits, sort of all the side benefits, outweigh maybe the additional steps to set it up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we find ourselves needing to update templates periodically throughout the season. Sure. And it's so much easier to just, you update the template in the content tab, and then you just pop into the program, deactivate real quick, pause it as you said, and then just reassign the template. You don't have to go through all the steps
right.
of re-automating.
Right. And it does, and it will still report on, rather than in the old automated groups, if you update that template, it can occasionally break out the report, and now you don't have sort of, over time consistent reporting, right? And so that's another drawback of the old automated groups. Great. So this is an example of a very simple one. I think this starts making more and more sense the more complicated we get. So why don't we jump forward to the next one, this is an upsell program. And one thing I'll say here, again, for those of you guys that aren't familiar with this entire sort of, it looks like a Visio diagram, the workflow in the middle. It's all drag and drop. If you are interested in this, we could do more in-depth training with anybody interested, with your account manager. But that's the whole point of this, right? Is you're seeing all the steps visually, and each one of these sort of breaks or arrows or whatever you say are stages or decision points in the process, and you're able to manage it all within one flow. So why don't we talk about that workflow here and the overall campaign more generally? And yeah.
Sure. So this one is our season pass affirmation, sort of a thank you for purchasing program. And we want to talk about a component within this, which is the upgrade email. And that goes to anybody who purchases a season pass product that's not our premier product, if you will. So we have unlimited and midweek winter season passes. And then we also sell a year-round pass that gives you skiing and snowboarding access in the winter, and then also access to our summer operations, which are bike park, golf, and adventure center. So that's where we're really trying to grow pass sales. So basically, if people purchase a winter season pass, unlimited or midweek, they receive an email. Thank you for purchasing. Did you know about this other product that might be better for you? And while we sold, let's see, to date we have about 19 passes which sold through this, which aren't, or upgrades, let me clarify, upgrades from a midweek or unlimited to our year-round pass, which isn't a huge chunk of pass sales by any means, but this only took an hour maybe to create this content and add it into this program, and it's definitely worth the return on that investment. So
Sure. Okay.
But anyways, yeah. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
What you were saying earlier about just the flow in general here. So like the way that this works really well in a program is that we are able to pull a whole group, anyone who purchased a season pass, and then customize the message based on the type of pass they purchased, all in the same program. So if they already purchased our year-round pass, which is the Beast 365, you can see that there at the top of the flow, they'll just automatically get their affirmation. Thank you for purchasing. Here's some things to know about the upcoming season. And then if they purchased another pass or a different type of pass, it segments them. So you can see that purple box, that's what that's doing. And then they go through this alternate flow. So they're getting a different type of message, and then they get their affirmation a few days later.
Sure.
So instead of 2 or 3 automated message groups, we put this all into one program.
Right. And the main benefit I see here is, I've seen it happen before when you're doing this same type of segmentation and sort of branching logic using the older automated groups, is you can forget about what's happening sort of on the fringes, right? Even best intentions, sometimes you lose track of that, right? And so here you're able to see everything that's happening revolving around that initial purchase of a pass. And you could see all the variations and versions or what have you, and make adjustments. And, to your point earlier, if you have to update creative on one of these, it's a lot easier to do it here than, tracking down templates and reassigning to the correct automation group and all those things. Here, it's much easier to maintain that. And more than anything, just keep sort of complicated campaign concepps all in one place, compartmentalized in your brain, kind of, and you can manage it all from one place versus having to chase things, especially if you have multiple users within your Acoustic account. People are saving, templates in different places. Somebody else created your automation group. What was that called? I forget. I don't know. Am I assigning it to the right place? All those things. It all happens here in one place, and it's just a lot tidier, for lack of a better word. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's super simple to see which queries are assigned. You do have to I think deactivate, and again, this is green grab, so we can't quite show, but
Yeah.
It's really easy to just click on each component of this and see which queries are assigned to each step without having to actually like dig too deep into the program.
Yeah, exactly. Like all of these individual UI elements here, these modules, they all expand onto sort of the details screen, like you said, right? So all those queries are attached right there once you click on each individual component. If you forget anything, it does a really good job of sort of visually indicating like you still have one step left, you know, all those things. And the other upside benefit too is in the event that you mess anything up, you'll also see it based on these. You could see these numbers on the workflow. That's how many people have completed that step. So if you start seeing zeros there, that's when you know, ooh, maybe my query's off, or I did something wrong. Very quickly it'll tell you in near real time how many people are at those stages, and it helps you identify issues a lot quicker than automated groups, where you might have to run a report and say it's 0 and then sort of do your investigatory legwork to figure out what went wrong. This'll show you each individual step where maybe you missed something. So I think that's super helpful, especially as we get more complicated, which leads to the third example here of pre-arrivals. So this is a great example of doing an entire pre-arrival campaign all in one workflow. Don't be intimidated by this group. There does appear at first glance to be a lot going on here, but it's actually not all that complicated. So why don't you walk us through this one?
Sure, yeah. Like Chris said, it looks crazy, but it's actually only sending 2 variations of a lodging pre-arrival email. So this one pulls anybody with lodging on the books and an arrival date within the next 10 days into the program using the lodging table. And it will trigger sends on 10 days pre-arrival, 3 days, or 1 day pre-arrival, depending on the particular booking window. And then it sends a customized message depending on whether or not the person purchased bike park tickets in addition to their lodging. So the first tier there at the top with the blue little email icon. Yep, so those are where the emails are actually being sent out. And then the purple boxes and the other branches below are just sort of organizing people and putting them in a waiting period. If they booked less than 10 days out, it'll send them an email at 3 days. If they booked less than 3 days out, it will send them their email at 1 day, just to make sure our guests are receiving the pertinent information, regardless of when they booked, but at controllable intervals. And just in general, it's so much easier to use a program for this application because you can see the flow all in one place. And I don't know how many of our friends out there are doing pre-arrivals or something similar, but yeah. In my experience, like I used to just take like a big piece of paper literally and try to like sketch out a flow chart to figure out how we wanted these things to work. And here you can just do it, right in the program.
Right, and this is a great example. We get asked the question a lot, especially as it relates to pre-arrivals, what's the best timing? This says you don't have to decide, right? Because that historically that conversation has always been, like we want to try and maximize based on our booking window, make sure the most amount of people get it. And so what people were historically doing is they might send out like a 10-day, and then they'll also send out a 1 day beforehand. But it ends up being some pretty crazy query logic that you have to build to make sure that if you're doing those independently, that, everybody who was sent the 10-day isn't getting the 1 day. And the query logic ended up being not all that complicated, but it became a lot to manage because if you're updating, one message one place or, the automated group in another place, it just becomes super clunky, right? This allows you to not necessarily have to be as worried about the timing of a pre-arrival email, and also capture, the maximum amount of people based on your booking window. So this kind of answers the question by saying you don't have to worry about that. We could do this all in one place. And it makes it significantly easier to manage. And you're actually throwing in an extra loop there too, because you had mentioned your versioning for, what was it, a bike purchase or bike park purchase? Was that right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that's a really good point, is this allows versioning a lot easier, and it's a lot easier to manage, right? Because it's just, now you can see all your versions, right? There's only 2 here, but if you were to get more sophisticated in your versioning, you could see and manage all that in one place. But also, perhaps more importantly, because it's so easy to monitor and see how many people are in each stage, you could help be more efficient in your versioning, right? If you see, say you version 4 ways, and over the course of a month you're seeing 1 or 2 people in a version, you might eliminate that because it's just not a big enough audience. So yeah, a lot of benefit here. As we get more complicated, it makes it much simpler to manage those. Because I'm just thinking in my own use case, and I am admittedly sort of the old school and still do automated groups a lot of the time when I'm setting up for people. So this session is for me as much as it is for the broader group. It just, once you start versioning, you become afraid of automated groups, and you almost stop versioning because it's so difficult to add more. To your earlier point, I think this allows, because it is so easy once you get the hang of it, it sort of becomes a catalyst for getting more creative, being more sophisticated and all those other things. So cool. All right, well, let's talk results real quick. So on to the next step. So yeah, pretty impressive, right? So you're getting open rates between 45 and 67%, click rates beyond 20%. Yeah, maybe you could just talk more broadly about the results, and maybe just some anecdotal as far as comparing old school automated groups versus programs, just maybe some high level thoughts about results, and maybe your sanity levels too.
Sure, yeah. So yeah, open rates for our pre-arrival programs are quite high, closer to that 67%. And these are highly informational emails, so this is the most important KPI that
Sure.
we look at for these, because we really want people to get this pertinent information before they arrive. And I think at this point we've kind of trained our guests, repeat guests anyway, to expect these emails. And
Sure.
I believe that that's what creates a high open rate, and the headline is important information, ...
Yeah.
So yeah, and in general, as you said, looking at metrics is so much easier in programs. And Lindsay does run a report for us on a bi-weekly, I think, basis of all of our automations. So we can kind of see it all wrapped up there, but it's just so much easier to monitor things as we go, looking at open, click, and just monitoring deliverability too, because that's something that over the last few years has become pretty increasingly important to us. Something that we're looking at really closely, and we're proud to have been increasing our deliverability scores. So yeah, I guess I'm not sure what else to say on that. We love programs.
Yeah, and maybe go ahead, David.
I would say, I think the open rate and the deliverability goes up as a consequence of the versioning, I think, and being able to deliver pertinent information. So, you know, that the summer pre-arrival is relatively simple, but we would have more versions for a winter pre-arrival where we might be hitting someone who's got a lesson. We need to let them know, you know, what time to be there and where to meet up. And so, you know, that I think contributes to the metrics a little bit too. And just being easy to do that, you know. We used to send a pre-arrival that had every piece of information, and it would take you a half an hour to scroll to the bottom of it. So
that's a really good point. So it's allowed you to edit yourselves, you know, just because, you know, it's much easier to version and give them what they need based on, you know, purchase behavior or whatever. Is
right,
that,
a day ticket purchaser needs a lot less information
right.
than somebody who's coming for a week and renting skis and taking a lesson. And so,
right. And so just at a high level, sort of from the sanity levels that I was mentioning before, if you can think back to when you're using automation groups versus now with the programs, when, you know, you're brainstorming internally and you know, the concept of automation comes up, you know, if we were to use like almost like a net promoter or something, would you say this has decreased sort of your anxiety levels as it relates to automation? When those conversations come up, do you find yourselves being more proactive in the brainstorming now of automation because this just makes life easier? Or maybe you could speak to that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't know if we've really, or I haven't necessarily thought about it at this point, but now that you mention it, yeah, I think we get much more creative with it now. And just in general, yeah. I also want to mention too that we have gone through a lot of trainings on this since our
Sure.
initial training. Once we decided to transition to do this, I specifically went through at least 3 working sessions with Lindsay and Sophie to figure out how to do this properly, and just to have them look over everything before we hit activate.
Sure.
That lasted a while, just so that we were confident in this. But yes, as you said, now that we're confident, I think, yeah, 100%. You know, we want to do as much as we can with it, and it's not scary anymore. And to your point, when we were using automated message groups, yeah, I think the answer a lot of the time was, we can't really do that, or you know,
Right.
we can't do that reliably.
Right.
So we probably shouldn't.
Right. Yeah, and that's a good point. You know, I think we're all prone to that, right? Like, you know, oh, that's tough, so I'm going to shy away from it, right? And you know, you caveated it. It's some work to get used to the new format, but overall, you feel that's paid off in, you know, in spades since you've gotten this dialed in.
yeah, and I think we used to, you know, Caitlin and I would be trying to figure out if we had, you know, like sharing the logic back and forth. Like, is this going to suppress these people from this?
Right.
Is this, and it's just visually so much cleaner with the programs. You can feel a little more confident. I mean, because a lot of times as we were speaking earlier, you know, with the automated groups, you know, trying to make sure that a certain group of people is not getting 3 pre-arrival emails is much more complicated.
Right. Yeah, because this naturally funnels them at each step of the sort of logic, right? So you're not having to stack query on query on query like you used to have to do in automated groups. It's pre-funneling some of that just based on the sort of the decision tree logic. So yeah, it makes that much easier. Cool. Any other thoughts? I mean, you know, we talked about some of the main benefits, you know, the editing, just being able to visually see everything in one place, being able to pause and restart programs versus starting from scratch, some of the reporting elements, the monitoring. Anything else you guys can think of that we might have missed?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I think that's it. I did, when we were moving on from the first program that we shared there, the anniversary program. I just wanted another really nice thing about being able to pause is, we would shut that off for the week
Yep.
or two around a deadline, because obviously many people purchase their passes at around the same time every year if that's a deadline. So
Right.
just being able to turn that thing off during that deadline period and then turn it back on is pretty nice too.
Yeah, that's one of the big annoyances we always hear with automated groups is like once you turn it off, it's off. You have to start over from scratch. So whatever that use case is to potentially have to pause something, this alleviates this, completely. So yeah, that's one of those annoyances we always hear. Like I thought I paused it. No, you stopped it. You have to start all over. So
Right.
yeah, I think this does a great job of eliminating that major annoyance. However small it may seem, it becomes big.